I'm 85 years old, and there is a moment I return to almost every single day, not because it was dramatic, not because anyone raised their voice or walked out of a room. It was a Tuesday evening in 1987, and I was sitting at the kitchen table reading a newspaper, and my son Daniel said something to me. And I didn't look up. My name is Harold. I'm 85 years old, and somewhere between that Tuesday evening and today, my son became someone I no longer fully know. And what I have spent the last several years trying to understand is whether that was inevitable, or whether it began precisely at that table, in that moment, when a 12-year-old boy decided something about his father that he never quite undecided. Daniel was not a difficult child. I want you to understand that from the beginning. Because when fathers talk about losing their sons, people often assume there was trouble early on. Rebellion, distance, some obvious sign that things were headed somewhere painful. With Daniel, there was none of that. He was warm, curious, the kind of boy who followed me around the house on Saturday mornings asking questions about everything. How does the furnace work? Why do leaves change color? What was it like when I was young? He genuinely wanted to know me, and I remember feeling proud of that, the way a man feels proud of something he believes he has earned. I thought, this boy trusts me. I thought I must be doing something right, and I was for a while. I was present in the ways I understood presence to mean at the time. I went to his school events. I coached one season of his baseball team badly, but I was there. I provided for the family without complaint. I believed that those things, taken together, added up to what a father was supposed to be. I did not yet understand that a child does not experience a father as a collection of efforts. A child experiences a father as a feeling. And feelings are built not in the grand moments, but in the small ones, the ones that happen in ordinary rooms on ordinary evenings when no one is paying attention to the fact that something is being decided. On the evening I'm thinking about, Daniel came into the kitchen while I was sitting at the table with my newspaper. He had been outside with the neighbor's kids, and he came in with that particular energy children carry when something has happened that they want to share. Something that felt important to them in the way that only children can feel importance, fully and without embarrassment. He said, "Dad, listen to this." And he began telling me something. I cannot even remember now what it was. Something about a game they had been playing. Some small victory or funny moment that had lit him up from the inside. And I did not look up from the newspaper. I said, "That's good, buddy," and I turned the page. That was it. That was the entire moment. 4 words and a turned page. He stood there for a second or two. I could feel him standing there even without looking, and then he walked out of the kitchen. And I finished the article I was reading, and I went on with my evening, and I did not think about it again for 30 years. What I did not know, what I could not have imagined in that moment, was that Daniel remembered it, not in the way we consciously hold on to things, not with bitterness or anger, but in the way the body remembers a temperature. He told me this himself years later, after his own marriage had ended, and we were sitting together in my living room, and something cracked open between us that had never opened before. He said, "I don't think I ever really came back to you after that." Not all the way. He wasn't accusing me. His voice was quiet and almost puzzled, like he was discovering the truth of it himself as he spoke. He said, "I think I decided something that night. I think I decided you weren't really interested." I have thought about those words every day since he said them. because here is what breaks me, what I could not have understood as a younger man, and what I understand completely now. He did not decide I was a bad father. He did not decide he was unloved. He decided something quieter and more damaging than either of those things. He decided I wasn't interested, and a child who believes his father is not interested does not stop loving his father. He simply stops bringing things to him. And when a child stops bringing things to you, you do not notice right away, because the absence of something small is very hard to feel. You only feel it years later when you realize that the door between you, the one that was always open, has been closed for so long that neither of you can quite remember how to open it again. By the time Daniel was 16, 17, he was polite with me in the way that people are polite with someone they respect but do not feel close to. I told myself it was normal. I told myself all teenage boys pull away from their fathers. I told myself it was a phase, and maybe for other boys it is. But I was telling myself those things because the truth was harder to hold. The truth was that I had given my son a clear and consistent answer to the question he was always asking without knowing he was asking it. The question every child asks their father, with every piece of news they bring, with every joke they tell, with every look across a room. The question is simply, am I worth your attention right now? And on a Tuesday evening in 1987, I answered him. I answered him with 4 words and a turned page. We are not estranged, Daniel and I. I want to be clear about that. He calls, he visits, we sit together and we talk about his children and about the news and about his work. We love each other, I am certain of that. It is never in question. But there is a quality of closeness that I watch other fathers have with their adult sons, a kind of ease and openness, a sense of being genuinely known. And I do not have that with Daniel, and I do not believe I ever will. And I have had to learn to carry that without letting it become self-pity, because self-pity is the one thing that helps nobody. What I have instead is honesty. Late, imperfect, incomplete honesty. That conversation in my living room, the one where he told me quietly that he had stopped coming back to me, was the most important conversation I had in the last decade of my life. I told him I was sorry in a way I had never allowed myself to say it before, not with excuses attached, not with explanations of how differently men were raised, not with any of the scaffolding I had built around my regrets for years. Just the apology, plain and direct. I looked at my son and I said, I wasn't paying attention, and I should have been, and I am sorry. And he nodded slowly, and we sat together quietly for a while, and something small but real shifted in the room. It did not undo 30 years. I am not telling you this story because it has a resolution that will comfort you. I am telling you this story because I am 85 years old, and I have learned that the most expensive things in a life are almost never the big decisions. They are the small surrenders, the moments when someone who loves you is standing in a doorway, full of something they want to share with you, and you are technically present in the room but completely, utterly elsewhere. If there is a child in your life who comes to you with small things, let me tell you something I had to learn at great cost. The small things are the only things. Everything else, the newspaper, the meeting, the thought you were in the middle of, every single one of those things can wait. The child standing in the doorway cannot. Not forever, not even for very long. They will wait a few times. They will try again a few times. And then, quietly, in a way you will not notice until it is already finished, they will stop. Put down the newspaper. Look up. That is all I know.